Hi, everyone. Welcome to our series of L&D podcast. And this is our first episode. So happy to welcome our special guest for today, Prayas Rajopadhyaya. He is the director of Job Dynamics, a company based in Nepal, with over 8 years of experience in corporate training and designing L&D programs. Besides being an exceptional corporate trainer, he also blogs frequently about human behavior, management, and career in his website boardconsultants.com. I think that's a very interesting name for the website. Thank you so much, Prayas, for joining, and a very warm welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Aditi, for having me here. I'm really looking forward to the conversation that we will be having. I'm pretty sure it's going to be meaningful, not just to us, but to all the listeners as well.
Thank you so much, Prayashdai, for joining and accepting my invitation for this podcast. So we started this podcast with the thought that L&D as a function is not very widely common in Nepal. And though there has been some little progress after COVID in this function, but it's still not widely recognizable in different big companies of Nepal and even outside Nepal. But in the coming future, we do see a trend that L&D will be as important as any other function like marketing or finance in any organization, and also hopefully in Nepal as well. So let's start our podcast. Before moving towards the core L&D thing, I would ask Prayas to introduce himself. Prayas being a human behavior enthusiast, interpersonal development consultant, trainer, a director, management consultant, blogger, and someone who intends to make people's life easier through introspection and reflection. Prayas, you're wearing so many hats. What's your identity and how would you like to introduce yourself?
That is the most difficult question that anyone can ever ask me. Well, to introduce myself on a professional level, I would just like to keep it short at Director of Jobs Dynamics. But then again, something that is really close to my heart is this people aspect of doing business, that is working with human beings, and anything about people that really fascinates me, especially their behavior, especially understanding why they do what they do. So that's something that I'm really fascinated about. And again, to keep my introduction, or to keep how would I introduce myself, I would just say that I am someone who would be willing to learn probably for a lifetime, and I'd be someone who would be encouraging people to keep their minds open in learning.
Okay, lovely. And I think we come across very few people right now who are focused on learning, who are focused on introspection, on reflection, on growing every day. And I'm so happy and so lucky to come across you. I go through your pieces of writing on Facebook and LinkedIn every time, like literally every piece of writing I've been through yours, especially on education, because that interests me a lot coming from the sector. And I totally love the way you clarify your thoughts, you put up the structure and just present it. And that's a kind of inspiration for me too, because I'm also trying a lot with the writing process, and I just take yours as an inspiration. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing.
Thank you for bringing that out. And I think it also should be brought out into light that this feeling is mutual. I go through your experiences and your writings a lot as well, especially on LinkedIn. Whatever you write, those writings, those sentences are really thought-provoking. And sometimes I must admit that some of my writings come as a secondary idea from whatever you've written.
Oh my God, that's the first time I'm hearing that. And thank you so much for putting up that. It gives me a motivation on a low day when I don't feel like writing, but now I will write more.
Definitely, you should.
Okay, so Prayas, among everything you do, right? There is consulting, there is blogging, there is training, then there is running a whole different organization, managing team and stuff. What are you most proud of? Where have you seeked most growth?
Again, it's one after another difficult questions. But then something that I've been proud of is it was probably at one point of time when someone came to me and then said that I want to be like you in future. That was a big blow to me personally, because someone who's looking up to me, that means I should be really mindful and careful about my thoughts and my actions, because someone is always out there who's trying to be like me. That I understand the person meant it as a compliment, or the person meant it with their whole genuine heart, but then that the happiness aside, that just adds a positive pressure on whatever that I do. So I think the core thing is I was really proud in that moment that I've been able to touch the lives of people, especially with the knowledge that I've shared, with the kind of works that I've done. But then again, this also comes up with another positive pressure of having to keep it up.
Yes, and totally. This is, of course, the most proud moment, because all of the work we put, all of the abundance we have in terms of finance and wealth and everything. But when someone comes up and says that what you're doing inspires me and I want to be like you, I think that would be a feeling beyond the world, right?
Yeah, it is. Again, I would just say I was happy at that moment, but then again, on a second thought, it was really scary. It was really scary as well.
Okay, so Prayas, what made you come into this sector, right? Because HR in Nepal is still not mature, right? And though I feel that post-COVID, there's still some traction over there, but I think you have been in this sector for quite long,
Yeah.
and especially from the time when even there were not some like proper HR functions in different, like, lot of companies. So, what inspired you? What motivated you to start something in HR or organizational development, to be specific?
A very short answer would be it's a hidden trial. I was on my journey towards exploration. And to be explaining this, I would like to go back to my undergrad days, where I thought I was kind of a numbers person. I was kind of good in finance and accounting, and I thought myself as a numbers guy. And I worked for a bank as well. I worked for under about a year, and I really didn't enjoy it. Not that banking is like generalized in a way that everybody hates banking jobs on it, but then it was just my personal experience. I'm not out here saying all banking jobs are monotonous or anything per se. I'm just saying that my personal experience with banking sector was not really good, and then I came to realize that I was not a numbers guy as I thought I was. I was overestimating my own abilities. And then I looked into myself and thought, okay, what's the next step then? And then a thought just came in. You're good with talking, you're good with people, you're good in speaking. So why not maybe try out sales and marketing? So and then I tried that as well. So I tried my hands on sales. I was actually I worked for about 3 months on for an ad agency, and then realized again sales was not my cup of tea. Then moved on
Okay.
to, okay, what's the final thing that's remaining? So HR was the thing. So I worked in a hospital
Mhm.
and then saw how messed up the human resource, especially in that particular hospital, was. And again, despite of not having worked a lengthy time there due to my own personal issues, I came to realize that, okay, that was something I was really good at as well. And that was something that I can create an impact on as well. So with that thought, I started doing a bit of HR freelancing. And then since I was really interested, and maybe after having tried my hands on finance and sales, I came into HR. So I had a bit of knowledge of everything. So with that jack of all knowledge and skills, I did a couple of projects as a freelancer, and then I met some wonderful people. And then there were these three people, including me. We started this Jobs Dynamics.
Oh my God, that's amazing, because it takes I mean, there must be a lot of awareness in you that you realize in such a less amount of time that this is not my cup of tea, or else people take like 10 years, 15 years just to realize that, okay, no, 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 I am done with this.
Definitely. And I would, again, it would also be fair to say that it was probably not just me. It was also the friends and the family and the environment that you surround yourself with. Because, again, if there had been people who would just be pushing, no, banking job is really good job, it's a really decent job, so you have to stay there no matter what happens. If there were people who would have said this to me, maybe might have followed that well-trodden path. But then people were alongside me. They were really supportive. They were really asking me difficult questions. So what next do you want to do? What is specifically that you dislike about this job? So it really made me think. And once you start into thinking about yourself, thinking about your career, again, it looks scary. It looks like there is a big world out there, and it looks like you're not ready for it. But then you would never know unless you take that path, unless you take that step. So I managed to take that step along with the help of my friends, my families. They're really supportive in this.
Lovely. I mean, sometimes, we are so lucky to have been surrounded with people, and even sometimes bad environment that, lets us move towards a good one, and very, very easily, I would say. Yeah. Okay, lovely. So, as a director of job dynamics, one of your a core area of work is also designing and delivering trainings and L&D programs, right? So, what are your current thoughts? What are your thoughts on the current trends in L&D progress in Nepal?
L&D as a whole, I would still say it's in its infant stage in Nepal, because it's a grim reality that a lot of companies are setting up L&D just so that they can fulfill their recruitment needs and not to actually develop people. Again, it gets the work done. I'm not saying it shouldn't be there. I'm not advocating against it, but the point is an L&D or learning and development culture, or this L&D function itself, should be about developing people. It should be about developing new leaders, or maybe maybe helping people realize their full potential. So that is something that I've not seen the L&D people practicing here in Nepal. I might have missed out on those people who have actually been practicing these kind of things. But then again, it's just a generalization from the vantage point that I see it. So in culture, especially when we talk about learning and development culture, I think not just having an L&D department, but the L&D practice coming from the top position itself. It should be a top-down approach that should be leading by example. I design a lot of trainings, and then the HR managers, they don't sit in the trainings. It makes sense when the employees do have to say something negative about the company and they hesitate to say it in front of their supervisors. It's understandable at that point, but then again, it really wouldn't make sense when you're designing a learning program, you deliver a training, and then those people would say, this is the training that should exactly be given to management and not to us. And when you go and take this idea to management, they would again point it down to their employees. This is exactly the training that the employees need. So again, this fingers pointing and this blaming game, that has been seen, and just having an L&D department might not solve it. There should be a culture itself, and that culture has to come from the top. That's kind of the trend that I've been witnessing. And again, to be very honest, that's just the trend that I've seen in Kathmandu. And that doesn't justify the entire Nepal.
Yeah.
Outside of Kathmandu, training is still a burden, training is still an expense, it's not an investment.
Of course. And trust me, until and unless the management, the top management, right from the CEO and the board level, until and unless they are growth oriented, I don't think no matter how much amount of trainings or L&D stuff you do, it's not going to be effective, because the growth has to come from the top.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's also understandable. It's also understandable that as you grow with experience, you start having those fixated ideas. You don't really want it to be challenged. You know that those ideas have served you best for the past 20 or 30 years, and you really don't want to change it. and it's understandable in that sense. But then, if you are someone who would be fixated on one idea and then expect your employees to be growth oriented, that just does not work.
Yes, and I think there was a TED talk where I heard this line, and I think it was very thought provoking that if you think that you are growth oriented, like if you think that you're continuously growth oriented, then that's also a fixed mindset.
Right.
That's also not a growth mindset.
That's a
And
paradox.
yeah, so when I heard that, it struck to me like, what? I was like, what? Oh my God, that's so true.
Yeah,
But yeah.
after we finish recording this, I'll have a deep contemplation about this.
Yes, of course. So, like in Nepal, as you said, that L&D is in like total. I don't think it has even come out of the womb yet. It's still in the womb for me. But what kind of, like, if I believe that you of course observe the trends outside of Nepal too, since you're so aware about what's happening outside. So what do you think, or what innovations have you noticed in the L&D function, especially outside of Nepal internationally?
Especially outside of Nepal, and there was this one project that we've also been trying to do, getting people outside Nepal and then trying to train them outside, was uh, a, a business simulation game. And something that I believe is on experiential learning. So these kind of simulations would give those people a visual representation of how learning happens, how change happens, and what role they exactly play for that change to happen. So I think one of the greatest trend that I can see is going towards gamifying or maybe simulating these kind of experiences. The second trend that I can see is, especially with the advent of TikTok, that has really shortened our attention span. So something about micro learning, so where you break down a concept into small blocks and then deliver those small blocks. And especially I've seen this trend with a lot of video contents itself, but then video content that has embedded gamified video content, or that has embedded part of you having to decide what to do, which is again a part of simulation. So that's something that I have myself seen in the international arena. I know it's really difficult to implement all those things right here in Nepal itself, because the awareness level isn't really at that high point. We still are on the traditional lecture-based trainings, and we as in a lot of management people still think training as a wand where you just move the wand and everything is sorted.
Yes, I mean, even like so my company, we work around e-learning, right? And we design and deploy e-learning based trainings for the companies in Nepal. And what you're saying is so true. I mean, e-learning industry, that's just a small part of L&D that's been there in the global market for 25 more than 25 years already. And like even in our neighboring country India, it's there since 2022 22 23 years already, and they are doing it so well. Like they're bringing in stuffs like AR VR in learning, immersive learning experiences, experiential learning, as you mentioned, micro learning. That's just a, I mean, very common right now over globally. And when we actually go and talk to our prospective clients, leads, and our current clients regarding e-learning or bringing in such things to this Nepalese market and their companies, I mean, I can see the resistance. I can see the, what are you speaking kind of expression on their face. And it just feels like, oh my God, it's there in the market for 25 years and we have not even started. When are we going to start after 100 years? So that's just a daunting feeling. And sometimes I feel that maybe we are in the wrong market, or maybe we are exploring these stuffs in the wrong timing. But there's so much of patience required by educating, and conversion is at the very end. The initial
Definitely.
thing is awareness.
Most sales, in most of the sales call that we do, we definitely have that rejection. But then in case of L&D, it's not just rejection, it's educating them and getting words thrown at your face with judgments like it wouldn't really work. But then if you look at what happened during the COVID times, we were really forced to use it. And had we been practicing these kind of edtech, had we been exploring or getting ourselves adjusted to the edtech platforms years before COVID happened, these things would have been really easy. And I still know a lot of top position people who would still say that these edtech platforms, the online education, would really not work. People need to be face to face in order for learning to happen. Again, I know that both you and I would disagree to it. But then this is exactly the reason that L&D culture needs to be developed, to break that fixed mindset of L&D does not happen in a digital box.
Yes, I mean,
This idea has to be broken. Yeah.
I mean, for me, right from my high school board exams to this date, like it's been 8 years, more than 8 years almost. Till this date, I think it's the only online learning, only and only online learning that has helped me grow and do whatever I'm doing, honestly. And if it
See,
wasn't for online learning, I don't know where I would be stuck.
of course. Because I also see a lot of, I myself have a TikTok account. Again, it's something how you use it. So it has both its pros and cons. And I see a lot of educational videos on TikTok. And we just go into the comments, we can see the frustration of people. There are literally comments saying, I learned a lot from your videos than I learned from my entire schooling. So that just shows kind of the frustration that people have, as well as the opportunity that if you use platforms and technology correctly, it can make an impact.
Yes, I mean, I feel so privileged that we are born in an era that, I mean, more than born, we are operating in an era where we have seen it all, right? We have seen non-tech time as well. We have seen the time where everything is, based on technology. We are exploring technology. We are developing on technology in such an, I would still say we are in very early stage of technology, and we are like, we have got the opportunity to use it, like not just be a consumer of technology, but also the creator of technology, right? And we are in such a great era, and I don't know why our people in our country, or maybe a lot of other countries, are still not realizing that how lucky we are, and no one could be luckiest as we are.
Definitely.
Okay, so moving on, in your professional career, you have trained a lot of people, right? Right from senior professionals, CEOs probably, to the just entry level professionals, right? And when we do trainings, there's a lot of criticisms and positive feedback to which we
Definitely.
receive, right? And barely we receive a constructive feedback, but either it's a very positive feedback, or it's a very negative feedback. So, looking at the criticisms, how do you take it, and how well do you respond to it?
Uh, Again, I see criticisms as any feedback that I receive. Again, your feedback could be a positive feedback, your feedback could be a negative feedback. But then, again, any feedback that you receive or I receive, it has to have an action step. So if it's a positive feedback, I would say thank you. So if it really has any action step also embedded with it, I would probably express my thankfulness more. The same thing goes with criticisms as well. If they are criticizing over the techniques that I use or the words that I've chosen, or if that's really constructive to me, I really thank them and I really try to improve it from the next time onwards. But then I assume that you're asking for the criticisms that really doesn't help you in any way. So for
Yeah.
those kind of criticisms, yeah, it'll always be there. I initially try my best to understand where they're coming from. And again, sometimes it's just that it's out of frustration of having been forced to stay in the training program. Sometimes they just have better things to do, and they're probably forced by management or their friends to be inside that program, and that they really would be doing something better off. Or sometimes they probably couldn't have had a proper lunch. They had to hurry up their lunch just so that they could make time for trainings. So again, the initial thing that I would really try to do is try to understand where they're coming from, because the frustration might be directed towards me, but then it could be thinly veiled as disguised as something else. So first thing, trying to understand that. Second thing, sometimes that simply does not work. When you're trying to understand that person, sometimes they might just get too bossy and then start doing personal attacks. And at that point of time, ignoring is the only option that you can do. I have been fortunate to say this, that I have never had any nasty things with any of my participants. So thankful to that, touchwood. That should never happen. But
Yeah,
then
of course.
I have been a listener of people who've shared nasty experiences, especially with trainers who got into a verbal fight with their participants because somebody tried to criticize their credentials.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times that the credentials of the trainer comes into the scrutiny, especially when any trainers say something that I really oppose of. So I've been thankful, but then with all criticisms, I think it's just the person's trying to see something else, trying to express their needs in some other form. So you just need to understand it.
I think I'm going to take it like as a learning for me today, because it's so, I mean, the thing which you said, that it's important to understand where they're coming from, and I think that was the biggest takeaway for me today, right? As so far now, I'm hoping for more. So it's because in the heat of that moment, right, when some criticisms are coming, some senseless criticisms are coming, right, and you are in you just get flowed away by the emotions. It's very
Definitely.
difficult at that point of time to calm my inner self down and think,
Right.
where is that coming from? And it's such a great approach.
I'd say it takes practice, because when you face any criticisms, your instant response is to defend.
Yeah.
So that when you start defending yourself, that means how the other person would take it is as, okay, so I'm throwing out some words to you, you're throwing out some words to me, and then the verbal war begins. So I think I would say it takes practice, because I was not born this way. I was not a perfect guy from my first ever training itself. I still remember my first ever corporate training. It was really embarrassing for me, because as a young person with a room full of middle-aged people, they really try to look down on you. And then once I started accepting that they're not really going to like me, it was really miserable and it was really embarrassing as well. But then again, it takes practice and practice.
So, I had this perception of you as a very emotionally intelligent person, and now I can see why.
Thank you for that.
And I mean, that's such a great takeaway for me, because I am usually the youngest. Even if I'm training anyone, I am the youngest, right?
Yeah.
Like I being the trainer, I am the youngest, and I just feel that. And being a woman, also, especially in the
Wow.
organizations where there are, a lot of males, and who are especially of the older generation, who have been working in the
Right.
organization for more than like 10, 15 years. Sometimes it feels like, I mean, myself, before going to the training, I feel a little bit nervous, right, compared to the other training. Why? Because I'm a woman, I am very young, and maybe my credentials wouldn't be, I wouldn't be as qualified as them or more
Right.
experienced than them, but maybe I have a different perspective, and that's the reason why I'm a trainer. Maybe I can put up things from a very different and simplified perspective. That's why I would say I'm a trainer. But that feeling, that I might not be good enough, that always pops in, and that creates a lot of drama than anything else. So I
Definitely,
think
this,
that's a very intelligent feedback. I mean, thing you have said.
as you said, this credential just comes into a lot of scrutiny, and especially for someone who's young and training older generation people, they would really look down on you, and they'll just try to say your age is the years of my experience. how can I expect you to teach me something new? So and that's a common question that I've faced in my career, especially in the early days.
Thank God I haven't I mean, touch wood, I haven't come across anyone who had the audacity to tell me directly on the face. But yeah, of course, I can sense that. Okay, so moving on, right? I mean, right now, this is also an era of personalized learning, right?
All right.
I mean, everywhere, right from primary education to adult education, we always talk about learning styles, and everyone has their own unique needs and all of that, right? So, when you are giving training to any organization, to any set of employees, how do you ensure that every participant in your program is getting benefited, or there is something for most of them or each of them?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's very difficult because especially in context of Nepal, where training is kind of an event where the management just mixes up everybody from lower level to higher level because it's a once in a year program. So why not everyone get involved? So it's in that context, it's really difficult. So when I have conversations with the senior management or the HR or the L&D head about these kind of trainings, I specifically say it in front that if we have a lot of people with diverse set of backgrounds and diverse set of positional hierarchies, I will not be able to reach out to everybody, and the transfer of training would be really at the minimal. But then again, there are also companies who develop a certain niche of people and want them to be trained with very good intentions at their heart and would want that those people would really grow. For that, I think designing of these kind of trainings is really important. So if it's about like 8 hours of training, you probably spend more than 30 hours trying to design it, how to get to everybody, how to connect with everybody, how to make sure that everyone gets involved, and most important of all, how to ensure that the skills get transferred. And a lot of times I've been fortunate to see this, but with the COVID and times are changing, a lot of people have realized, a lot of people in senior management now, they've slowly come to realize that doing training only once doesn't really ensure the transfer of skill happens.
Yeah.
So what we used to do is we complete an 8 hours of training, or let's just say a training package, and then we provide them with a free follow-up after 15 days.
Okay.
And for all of those, each of those 15 days, we send out prompts every day to the participants through email. So these prompts could be, did you use this concept that we learned today? How did you find it? What challenges did you face? So once we start sending out these prompts, they'd be bound to think, because you see, training is really, it's a control environment. You think, okay, that makes sense, I've understood it and I'm going to implement it. But then once you go to your work desk, it's an uncontrolled environment. You think you know, you've learned those concepts, but then once you start implementing it, you might just get lost. You might just get haywired. So these prompts really help them seek for advice, seek for help, because at times people get confused, but then they don't know who to ask for. So they just throw out their hands and they, okay, let me just go back to my old way. But then once you start showing these prompts, they would be forced to think about it. They'd be forced to actually practice it. I'm not saying they have to do it in a very decent manner. Sometimes you just get hung up. Sometimes you get lost. But then that's also okay. In the 15th day, we do a free follow-up, and then the same participants, they come back, they share their experiences, they share how these prompts have either helped them, or sometimes how these prompts have added extra work for them, because that also happens. So I think with that way, that was something that was really useful, what we did. And at least I wouldn't really say that was the best thing, but I would claim that the transfer of the skills was marginally better than what we used to do before.
I think that's a very interesting technique, I would say, which I've come across. Because I mean, honestly, I haven't come across this way of following up, especially through prompts. I have seen following up and having some group chats every now and then. I have seen people following up or having a follow up meeting or such, maybe in 15 days or 30 days. But I haven't seen, the technique which you mentioned of. Sending prompts and getting feedbacks and getting reflections on those. I think that that's such a great thing, because then they are also being responsible for their own learning, and
Right.
at least for next 15 days they're responsible, which is good enough for them to set their mindset on, okay, I need to do this thing in my regular function. I think that's a really nice technique, and anyone who would be watching this video, especially if they're in the training sector, that would be a very nice technique for them to adopt as well.
Definitely.
Okay, so Prayash Dai,
Uh-huh.
you are director of job dynamics. You are also involved in other areas of work, some consulting, vagera too, and you are blogging as well, right?
Yeah.
And how are you? Like, how do you usually manage your time to keep up with, like, your work, your something which you love, and everything else?
To be very honest, I've not been able to manage it properly as much as I would expect it to be, or as much as how people would see me from the outside. I've
Yeah.
not been able to manage it, to be very honest. And especially with the mixture of, I'm also studying a master's in philosophy.
Oh
So,
wow.
in addition to that, so it's another burden that I have undertook deliberately. And with that in the mix, it's difficult. And I'd just be honest and vulnerable and say that I have not been able to manage it.
Okay.
It looks okay from the outside, but then from the inside, I'm doing this, all this hustle and bustle. It's kind of really difficult. Sometimes I question myself, why did I have to do all this? Why did I even have to take up all this? But then the thing that really keeps going is understanding why I chose it in the beginning itself, with the distant future in mind, that once I complete this, okay, this is something that is going to happen. So why I started my own blog, because one day I was really bored and then thought of ranting and then wrote some lines. That's how it started. But then why am I still continuing it is because there are people who still come to me and say that I've been missing your articles because I've not posted for quite a time. So even if it's just one or two people, it really matters to me that someone, at least someone out there, is reading what I'm writing. Someone out there draws any kind of knowledge from whatever I write or whatever I share. So I think that's something that keeps it going. But then on a deeper level, I've not been able to manage it.
Okay, I think that's also a very, it takes courage to accept certain
Right.
things, especially on the internet, because we always try to show things. Oh, our life is perfect. We are doing this. We
Exactly.
are doing this for growth. I mean,
It's not working that way.
we intend to do. Of course, even I intend to wake up every morning at 4 a.m. and do some stuffs, but I'm not being able to, right?
Right.
And it's so difficult to accept, because at one point we are, of course, portraying ourselves as a certain person, as whom we are trying to become, right? But ideally what we are currently, currently what we are doing, it's quite different from what we are trying to become, and that's takes a lot of courage to accept it. Thank you so much, Dai, for doing that. Moving on, I assume, based on your social media post, I feel that you are a voracious reader. So what were the few books which really helped you with your journey in HR, or your career, to be very specific?
There have been a lot of books that have really helped me, especially with my own exploration. Um, I would not really say that, okay, these are the books that you also should read, but then something that really helped me explore my own path was, the first book was called Insight by Dr. Tasha Urich. So this
Okay.
was about how to develop self-awareness, and especially when you think you are self-aware, but then you really are not. That was really an eye-opener for me. So that was one book that really opened my eyes. The second was The Courage to be Disliked. The third one was Nonviolent Communication by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. So these three books were really, really hard hitting on me. It felt like the writers, the authors of those books came out and gave me a slap and then just said, "What the hell are you doing?" So it was kind of revealing and kind of an eye opening for me. And these books have really been influential of what I have been doing and I've been practicing.
Okay. So, Dai, you are a corporate trainer, right, since 8 years. And what are few things which you don't like about being in this profession? Few things which you don't like.
Okay, a few things that I don't like. Um, First thing, something that I don't like is how we tend to think the millennials or the upcoming generation as someone who needs quick rewards, but then the boomers or the current top management are the ones who come at and say, okay, I want these results to be achieved within 2 hours. So
Yeah.
that's kind of being more greedy on the rewards. So that does not happen. So that's something that I really, really don't like. Something that I also don't like about the kind of corporate trainings that happens in Nepal here is the manager or the supervisor, they themselves have a defined set of objectives. They themselves have a defined set of learnings or theories that has been already expressed out to the employees, but they just need someone from the outside to come and see the same thing, because someone else coming from the outside and saying it makes their work or their way of doing credible. So that's something that if someone asked me to do, I would humbly apologize and just make any excuse that I'm really occupied. I cannot really say that no, I cannot do this, but again, relationships are also important.
Moving on, with the same thing, what are like some changes that you expect to see or you would like to see, especially for the L&D function in Nepal in the coming couple of years?
Especially for those who are setting up their L&D or those who are trying to install a learning culture, the first thing that I would probably really say it in the loudest tone possible would be it starts from the top. The top management has to be there. They have to be dedicated towards learning themselves, because the Nepalese society, or I would say the Indian, the South, this South Asian context itself. This is the leadership here has to be shown. The leadership here has to be shown by example. So until unless the top management, they themselves do not show interest or they themselves do not participate in learnings, the learning culture might not happen. The second thing, what I've found in a few Nepalese companies who have their L&D department is they have their own set of calendar, and these calendars and the training topics, they're already predefined by the HR or the L&D department itself without carrying a need assessment itself. So sometimes the employees might just be sitting there being forced to sit and thinking, this is not something that's really useful for me. I'd better off be doing something else. And that's where the verbal arguments with the trainers might happen. So sometimes, again, it might make sense sometimes that people think, I'll just give you an example. So at one company, the L&D thought personal finance was something that everyone should know. I agree, everyone should know. But then doing it at one point of time versus doing it at the need of an hour are two different things. So when the company implemented, okay, we're doing a company-wide training on personal finance, there were a lot of people who thought, okay, I need personal finance, but not at this point of time. I have other better things to do. So in that way, the L&D really does not become effective. So again, the intention is pure at heart, but doing things at the wrong time, that just might increase your expenses only without a fruitful benefit.
Sometimes I feel that I'm doing this e-learning thing at the very wrong time, but But then I also feel that at least we have the first mover advantage. So if I won't, then who will do it? Right? Maybe next couple of years there will be a greater scope, but then yeah, that's there.
Hope so.
Okay, so yeah. Uh, for my final question, what advice would you have for someone who is just starting out on their career, who are just entering the corporate world? What would you like to say to them?
As someone who is more keen on listening, I first want to listen to them before giving advice to them. Because
Okay.
a lot of times when people are asked for advice, they just bluntly give out advice without really listening to them. I would be someone who would want to listen to them first. But then if I had to give an advice, I would just say explore. Because you think you might be doing something and it would be better for you, but then it might just turn out you might end up hating it, or you might end up hating someone for forcing you to do it.
Yeah.
So just explore.
And I think that's so true. If you keep on exploring, you learn and you'll make something out of it.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I started exploring from finance to marketing to HR, and I thought I really loved HR, but then I'm still exploring myself that I really love the L&D part of HR. I did a lot of interviews. I did a lot of payroll calculations. I did a lot of performance reviews, KRAs and KPIs, making all those things. I did all of that, but then where did I thrive the most was L&D. So exploration, I guess, will probably never stop. So there might be something else inside L&D that I might be, again, keen on exploring in my further stages of life.
I think that's all. That's also the reason why you are my first speaker for the L&D series, because I felt that you are the guy for L&D. Okay, Dai, thank you so much for coming to our podcast. And I think I had a really insightful conversation. I had great learning takeaways, especially on the prompt thing which you guys are doing. And I think that's a great takeaway. I can even experiment with my trainees. That's something which I would love to learn more about. And
How your experience turns out to be.
yes, of course, definitely, and we need to do more of such meetups, probably more physically, and then we can have deeper conversations, because we need to have L&D community, right? Then, because until and unless there is a community, we won't be able to grow. We would be just scattered, just like how marketing was years back, probably 10 years back, right? But for L&D to become as important as marketing or any other function, we need to have a community of passionate L&D professionals who are working day in and day out to make sure that employee growth or anyone's growth and development is a necessity, and it's not just a privilege or it's not just a trend. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, Aditi. Really thankful for for inviting me and for making me the first guest of this series. Really honored, and I'm really anticipative of how the entire show turns out to be.
Yes, and I really hope everyone enjoys the show and gets to connect with Prayas Rai. And I'm going to link up his LinkedIn profile and TikTok profile as well in the description. So please do make sure to check out and connect with him. Please go through his website, boardconsultants.com, to read more about some interesting blogs around consulting and life of consultants. And do follow him on LinkedIn, because he posts really insightful stuff. I mean, something which will make you think, okay, I need to think about this. This would be your reaction to his posts. And he's an interesting guy to talk to, very insightful conversations, emotionally intelligent person, one of the very few emotionally intelligent people I've come across. I'm so grateful and so fortunate to have met you. Thank you so much, Prayas Rai.
Thank you for having me, Aditi. Wish you
Okay, so we'll put an end to this, right?
Sure.
Okay.